The blood route, the only way to get to Jesus. The blood route, the only way for true believers. The blood route, the only way that he can redeem us. The blood route, the only way that he can clean us. The blood route, the only way to get to Jesus. The blood route, the only way for true believers. The blood route, the only way that he can redeem us. The blood route, the only way that he can clean us.
It's his route, not my way. The true way to Yahweh is ignoring what the world say, to do what the words say. Most can't afford that, man, you can't ignore that. The purchase agreement to heaven was arranged through the blood. The forgiveness, the mercy, the grace was arranged through his love. Did you know that the fleshly rock is highly contaminated? You say you won't, but you do. You say you will, but you won't. Evil is lurking and searching. The time of this earth is so urgent. The seed sown or emerging. So what's the harvest you yield? Is it a life in the pit, or is it truth to give strength? Is it life that you seek? Cause death is sure to be taste. Heaven's gate and hell's depths, eternity is the bait. Seek his face and find comfort in the warmth of his grace. It's by your face, so I wait. No man knows the date or the time. Each second and each breath is a step closer to dying. To find Christ and get behind what we call the bloodline.
The blood route, the only way to get to Jesus. The blood route, the only way for true believers. The blood route, the only way that he can redeem us. The blood route, the only way that he can clean us. The blood route, the only way to get to Jesus. The blood route, the only way for true believers. The blood route, the only way that he can redeem us. The blood route, the only way that he can clean us.
No one goes to the Father except by his Son, and no one goes to the Son except by his blood. Man, I done heard so many things come straight out the hood, and people say they do, but no one really knows what's good. But we've been flipping the word, and the word taught us the truth. So now we bringing the word to the hood and back to the youth. We roll our eyes at religion, throwing pies at tradition. If you can't take the truth, me stay about the kitchen, cause the blood has been given. It's a way to Christ. The story is true. He died, then he rose to life. When you believe that and receive that, it's true. Your sins are forgiven the moment that you ask him to do it. Your sins have been lifted, and now you can relax in the newness of Jesus Christ and live your life the way he asked you to do it. It's real. This what we talking about, the blood route. It's the route that saves. Jesus is recruiting blood scouts. The blood route.
The only way to get to Jesus. The blood route, the only way for true believers. The blood route, the only way that he can redeem us. The blood route, the only way that he can clean us. The blood route, the only way to get to Jesus. The only way for true believers. The blood route, the only way that he can redeem us. The blood route, the only way that he can clean us.
This is opposite of the secular street drugs and guns. Been redeemed by the truth through the blood of the Son. Been created with the purpose, seen clear through the truth. Seen clear by me, seen clear by you. The whole back is a whole gap full of lack of knowledge. That God's grace has been given, the sin has been abolished. The sin Savior he gave us a way to be polished. The street creed and the greed is what we aim to demolish. The blood of Christ is the life, the grace, the faith that's applied. So take your place by your side. Salvation and redemption is what the blood route implies. The true path to eternity is through Jesus Christ. The truth, the way, and the life, the blood route.
Only way to get to Jesus. The blood route, only way for true believers. The blood route, the only way that he can redeem us. The blood route, the only way that he can clean us. The blood route, the only way to get to Jesus. The blood route, the only way for true believers. The blood route, the only way that he can redeem us. The blood route, the only way that he can clean us.
What's good, everybody? It's Monday. It's 7:56. We're not at the Drive Center. We're at the Worship Center. We're at Greater St. Paul Church of God in Christ at the West Side. Shout out to DJ Flinders, man, for him putting us on remote today. We are back to the green screen because we're not at our normal location. And so, improvise. You dig?
Yes, sir.
We got prayer for the next 21 days, every day from 6:30 to 7:30. So we thought, why not just go ahead and bring it, you know what I'm saying, out here versus trying to get all the way back down to the center. You know what I mean? Next week God willing, we'll be able to go to the center because we'll be at the north location. So we'll be able to get, you know what I'm saying, over there in about 5 minutes. So So please forgive us for the tardiness. If you rock with us week to week and you're here every Saturday at 7:30 on Monday on time at your phone, then we definitely appreciate you rocking with us. We definitely appreciate you sharing, liking, and doing all those wonderful things. If you feel like the message is worth sharing, we definitely appreciate that. Today's video might be a little choppy because we are on, needless to say, in a location where the Wi-Fi is a little unstable because of how far we're away from the modem, if you will. Somebody is supposed to bring the cord. I'm gonna take the blame for that because I did ask someone else to prepare the lights. I don't know if I told him to bring the cord. I think I did, but I don't know. Shout out to Blake Williams. It's good. How you, brother David?
Doing good, doing good. Glad to be in prayer
Amen.
today.
Amen. Yeah, man. I mean, life is exciting, man. This is probably one of my favorite times of the year. I feel like this is, when we get the rest of the year, you know what I mean? When we get everything planned out, when we start to, you know what I'm saying? And God's good. Fasting, praying, asking the Lord what He has for us to do, say, and be in this particular season in our lives, right? You know what I mean? Redemption. Huh? Don't turn my head and make it loud. Oh, let me do that. Is that better? Because it's on my shirt. Y'all stop being funny. Yeah, man. We good. God is amazing. That's better. Hey. All right, so yeah, man. Redemption. That's what we on. That's what we talked about last week. We gave a little precursor to what's going on. Shout out to my Wednesday Bible study class. We are going to dive deep into the thought process behind redemption. We started to chop down Psalms chapter 107. But the word redemption in general, I'm going to ask you a few questions tonight. I hope you're prepared. God bless you. The word redemption in general, man, sparks something in me. You know what I mean? And I think as Christians, we don't, or men and women of God, we don't recognize it. I shouldn't say don't, but I feel like we skip over it sometimes. You know, like there's nothing like the beginning of your salvation, like when you first recognize that you've been saved, man. You know what I mean? Like when you first accept Christ into your heart, and this process begins. There's nothing like the zeal that is attached to what you got going at that moment. You feel me? Like you feel a certain type of way. You want to tell everybody about what you were and what you are now. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like if I can remember back when July 23rd, 2006, the day I got saved, I called my guys and told them that, you know what I'm saying, not to give away all the testimony, but I told them what I told them, and were in tears, was pleading with them to come and join me, man. You know what I'm saying? I had been redeemed, and I was definitely excited about telling somebody about it. So, Brother David, so what you think when I say the word redemption, and you start to kind of let your mind run in that regard, what comes to mind?
First thought is, to be bought back, um, um, but also with like a price. And the thing that is I can't get out of my mind is just the high price that Jesus paid in order to redeem me. And when you talked briefly about how that gets overlooked, like living in the reality that Jesus paid a price. We talk about the cross often, but like what he had to go through, the hours, the agony, the pain, the crown of thorns on his head, being pierced in his side, being whipped all night long, being spit on, mocked, all of that, like the high price that he paid in order to buy me back. And to say, because I was lost, without Jesus, I would have no opportunity to make heaven my home. Um, but also just understanding that he knew all about me before he did that. He knew I was a liar. He knew I was despicable. He knew that, I just sinned, and he still was willing to pay that price. So when I think about redemption, it's hard for me not to think about the high price that he paid in order to do that.
Dig that. when I think about redemption personally, obviously all of those things come to mind and to heart. And what really, you know what I'm saying, has been resonating in my thought process for the last weeks in respect to just the word redemption and the act of being redeemed is freedom, man. And that's what we're gonna talk about a little bit today. All right. So we're gonna jump into it a little bit, uh, because I don't want to beat around, you know what I'm saying? Let's just get to it. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna skip down, right? And of course, Psalms chapter 107 is famously known for Psalms chapter 7, verse 2 that says, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say so." And of course, when you think about redemption or being redeemed, that's one of the scriptures you think about, and that's verse 2. But in this whole body of work, this psalm written by David, in a series of psalms that began, I believe, in 100, uh, or the sixth. I'm sorry, this is the fifth installment, I believe, but I don't want to be wrong. We will clear that up next week, definitely. I want to make sure I'm between the fifth and the sixth installment in this series of psalms that David is talking about. In particular, this one is talking about redemption, right? And when I think about being redeemed, I think about freedom, man. And we're gonna work with 10 through 16, I believe, right? That's what I said. We're gonna work with 10 through 16, and on 10 through 16, it talks about. Um, let's pull that up. Psalm 107, 10 through 16. Let's put it on the screen, and DB, if you could, let's read that real quick.
Some sat in darkness and in the shadow of death, prisoners in affliction and in irons, for they had rebelled against the words of God and spurned the counsel of the Most High. So he bowed their hearts down with hard labor. They fell down with none to help. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He brought them out of the darkness and the shadow of death and burst their bonds apart. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wondrous works to the children of man. For he shatters the doors of bronze and cuts in two the bars of iron.
So you get why I wanted to. I precursored this with when my first thoughts was about freedom.
Yeah.
You dig what I mean?
Yeah.
And obviously, when David is speaking in the psalm, it has layers of meaning. If you dig what I mean, like it is literal, right? Because there were those in context with the children of Israel and all the things that he was going through that was going through exactly these things. And then it is I don't want to say metaphor, but it is an analogy or it is a depiction of us. You feel me? And it's a depiction of the bondage of sin, right? And a lot of times when people explain the bondage of sin or when you talk about sinning, people always attribute the consequences of sin being hell. You know what I mean? And I'm definitely not saying that's not the consequences because it definitely is. The consequences of sin is you not being able to spend eternity with God in heaven, but you spend eternity in a place that was not meant for you, but you made your home there because of first you rejecting God and rejecting Christ by your actions, you know what I'm saying, and living in the bondage of sin. But hell for sin is the ultimate price. It is forever torment, right? It is the eternal torment, right? That is the future of sin, right? The present of sin is bondage. What do you mean, Brother Jay? Well, the present of sin is what the scriptures so poetically say in Psalm chapter 107, 10 through 16. It talks about being in irons. It talks about being in darkness. It talks about being in all of these different things. And I don't know about you, but I remember when I was literally a slave to sin. Pull up Romans chapter 6 too. When I was a slave, and I was in a situation to where sin ruled in my life. Sin was the king and reigned in my life. It seemed as if I was free. You dig what I mean? Let's go to verse 21, 621. So it seemed like I was free. It seemed as if I had all the freedom in the world. It seemed as if I could do anything that I wanted to do. It seemed as if I was able to, you know what I'm saying, live free, do what I want, you know what I mean? But in reality, I was running a race that wasn't for me. Therefore, I was in bondage to sin. I was in bondage to my evil desires, the desires that I wasn't supposed to have in the first place. You think what I mean? No, pause. The desires that I wasn't supposed to live out in the first place. The desires that had started off as a twinkling in my mind and became the fabric of everything that I was.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it just is what it is. I was in the worst case bondage, the worst case darkness. And the reason why I call it the worst case is because there's nothing in the world like thinking you're free and really being in bondage. And there's nothing in the world like feeling like you're in the light, but being, you know what I'm saying, bombarded in dark. What you got? 621 says it just left.
Yeah, why did it leave?
I don't know. What you got?
But what fruit were you getting at that time from the things in which you were now ashamed? For the end of those things is death.
Go to 6. What does it say? 20 says what?
For when you were slaves of sin, you were free in regard to righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
But what fruit were you getting
Yeah.
at that time from the things of which you are now ashamed? For the end of those things is death.
So that is Romans 6:20 and 21. So Romans 6:20 talks about how you thought you were free, you know what I'm saying, in your, you know what I'm saying, disregard to righteousness. You thought you could do anything you wanted to do, but in reality, you know what I'm saying, you were really in bondage, thinking you were free. And then it goes on to talk about, but what fruit did you gain from all of this freedom that you had? You just basically was, you know, chasing your own tail. You know what I'm saying? And what's weirder about that? Those are the dog lovers, right? You know, like, why are you, you know what I'm saying, you're fighting a never-ending battle trying to get your tail. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing? You wasting energy. You look weird. You know what I'm saying? It just is what it is. So, like, people, we consistently talk about, again, we attribute sin to being hell, right? That's the end of it. As if sin is cool right now.
Yeah.
Not as if you're saying you know, sin is everything or sin is okay right now. But when I say as if sin is cool right now, as if you're not living in bondage right now. Like the end torment is any, you know, it's going to be worse than the now torment, but as if you're not being tormented by sin right now. And you know what I'm saying? And what happens is, like, once we get a semblance of light, once we get a piece of, you know what I'm saying, freedom, right? Then we can recognize in reality how much in the darkness we really are.
Yeah.
You know, like, we see someone living in the freedom of redemption. We see someone understanding what it is to be in the light of redemption, but we're baffled by and don't understand how they could live in that way when us ourselves being lost lost in sin, in the bondage of sin, and in the darkness of sin. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, you know what I mean, like, just cats in jails, people in jail act like they're happy. You know what I'm saying? But in reality, they are in the, you know what I'm saying, in bondage. They don't even recognize how, you know, how much in bondage they are until they look outside and recognize, I'll never be able to. You know what I mean? Let's take it further. Like, one of the things that, you know what I'm saying, when I think about freedom, I think about in detail is the bondage of addiction. You know what I'm saying? And addiction looks like it can be just about anything from food to TV to drugs, alcohol, people, sex, porn. You know what I'm saying? Like, the list of addictions, you know what I'm saying, run wild. You feel me? And in regards to being freed from the bondage of of addiction, I think about that in connection to the bonds that were on you, right? Because when you are in the midst of addiction, in some cases, you don't even recognize, you know what I'm saying, how much this addiction has ran your life in the mud. You know what I'm saying? At one period of time, I don't want to call it a poem, but it was a thought process that I had about, or I think I may have said it in another Bible study. We talked about how, like, a crackhead has no idea they live in crackhead. Remember that? Like, or somebody like on meth or something like that. And I'm using these two drugs as an example, not to glorify them above or any other drug. Addiction is addiction. You know what I'm saying? Oh, there's a meme right now that's super funny that I saw on Instagram of this rapper. I don't even know his name, that was talking about popping Percocet, right? Like he was sitting there talking about he was itching, you know what I'm saying? Like he was like, man, the perk is in my bag. Like you could see him in his mind toiling with the thought process of, I need this. You feel me? And in the meme, he asked the person during the interview, do you want to do Percocet? And the dude like, no, I don't do Percocet. And he says, oh, you don't do Percocet? Like as if, you know, in his world, in this bondage of his world, everybody is on drugs. You know what I'm saying? Because he kicks it with and he's around people that are in bondage. He don't even remotely connect with someone that's free. So he's like, you don't do Percocet. And then he says, man, I'm itching. You know what I'm saying? And the interviewer goes, are you going to be okay? And he's like, come on, I'm going to be fine. I ain't no addict. Right? When in reality, he had gave you every single sign that he is like addicted to, you know what I'm saying, Percocets. You know what I'm saying? Like it's all over his face. If he didn't have shades on, you could probably literally see it spilling out of his eyes how much he needed, you know what I'm saying, this drug at the time. You know what I mean? And I said all that to just shine light on like how much in bondage we could be, but be clueless that we are, you know what I'm saying, literally not even remotely close to being free. We are in chains. Whatever it is that we have attached to our lives, sin, let's call it sin, has grabbed a hold of us and has such a grip on us that it is difficult for us to even recognize the sun when it's shining. We are so engulfed in the lifestyle that goes along with the addiction that it is what it is. Like the brother said, like he was asking, you know what I'm saying, somebody did they do Percocets as if like it was breathing or like you eat food, right? Yeah. Like, no, I don't do Percocets. Like, what do you mean? Like, who takes, you know what I'm saying, mind altering drugs, you know what I'm saying, recreationally, besides him. You know what I'm saying? And people that are addicted to these drugs. And for me, I think about, you know what I'm saying, in connection with all the things we talked about. We talked about being lost. We talked about what the freedom looks like. We talked about, Romans chapter 6 and how um, we thought we were free, but in reality, we're so far away from being free, it's ridiculous. And then we talk about that in connection to those of us that are free. How important is it for us to express the joy of freedom, aka redemption? How important is it for us as men and women of God to display, you know what I'm saying, the conquered chains, right? How important is it to us to describe the darkness that we once lived in, to describe the bondage that we once lived in, and then give thanks unto God for redeeming us or freeing us from the bondage of sin? How important is it for us to recognize the torment of present sin, the literal cost of present sin is the bondage of your life, the darkness of your life, the bondage and torment of being in something and not being able to recognize it, being completely unhappy, but living a lie on so many levels that you feel as if this temporary thing that you may or may not be feeling is good enough to satisfy the longing in your heart on a consistent basis for freedom. Like, what does that truly, you know what I'm saying, look like and feel like it? And for us, those of us that have been redeemed, the scriptures say it is this. If we look at let's look at Psalms chapter 107, and go scroll down a little bit. I want to say we are like right around the 30 something. If there is, let me see something real quick. Let me look at it. When you 107. Yeah. So if you keep going down, where are we at? 20? Go to 23. What does it say? No. Keep going. 30. Where are we at?
27.
Yeah. Keep going. Keep going. Where we at?
35.
Is that the end? Keep going. Okay. So when we start talking about the redemptive work of Christ, right? and those of us that have been redeemed, I think sometimes we do away with the importance of speaking on how amazing it is to be redeemed and us recognizing how amazing it is to be redeemed and what it looks like to live the life of being or the life of the redeemed. Verse 42. And the travesty of a closed redeemed mouth. You know what I'm saying? Those of us who have been free from the bondage of sin and the bondage on the darkness of sin, it is our responsibility as men and women of God to express how we were freed and what it feels like to be free, right? On verse 42 it says, "The upright see it and are glad, and all wickedness shuts its mouth," right? This is at the bottom of Psalms chapter 107. And all throughout Psalms chapter 107, that's verse 42, all of Psalms 107 gives you different areas or different types of redemption that the Lord has delivered these people out of, right? The one that we're talking about right now is the bondage of addiction, the bondage of sin, and being in darkness, right? Just literally us being lost in our own ways. And specifically, it talks about you made these choices and got yourself in bond, right? So you made these choices. That's why this is in connection with addiction and sin, you know what I'm saying? Things of that nature, because in most cases, no one held a gun to your head and said, take this. You know what I'm saying? In some cases, it could have very well been that. But I feel like there were some decisions that were made before you got to the point where somebody held a gun to your head and said, hey, take this. So I would say it still attributes itself to being a self-inflicted bondage. You made a choice. This is what happened. And now God, through his mercy and grace, has redeemed you from your self-inflicted bondage. And throughout the scripts, it reminds us, let those rejoice and give God thanks. Let those that have been redeemed say something. Let those that have redeemed give thanks unto God for his redemptive work. It says that all through the scriptures in Psalms 107. Then we get to 42, it says, right, the righteous are glad, right? And the wicked shuts their mouth. Two ways we can take that, right? But the script is the script. Those that see redemption are glad. Those that are wicked say nothing. So is it that those that are wicked say nothing to the redemption that they see? Or is it that those that are wicked can't even speak to, you know what I'm saying, the level of redemption or what it feels like to be redeemed from things of that nature? You know what I mean? How amazing is it for someone to tell a story of redemption? How much glory do we find in it, right? Back in the day when we were younger, we used to have testimony service, right? And it would always be that person in testimony service that would talk about, hey, when and some of those testimonies, you know what I'm saying, that brought us through that we talk about when somebody was brought all the way out of, you know what I'm saying? It would tear the church completely down. You know what I mean? Like you would be on